you can speak to other Sofrim, Sofrot, ask them what they were taught, and some of it will be exactly the same and some of it will not be. So, right. And you just do that. And then, but you take notes.
I want to stop you for a second. That is so interesting.
What?
So one of the things I found in the medieval literature as I was working on my PhD dissertation is that there's two types of approaches to and I was dealing with Torah scrolls in God's name. So there's two approaches. One is we examine in great minutia and detail the Talmud and the writings of Maimonides, and we come to the conclusion, what is the law? And there's a completely different approach, which is we go and we ask the scribe down the street, and you'll have some of the top rabbis of the Middle Ages. They'll say, well, yes, we're supposed to do X, Y, Z, but I asked the scribes, and here's what they do.
Right.
And that's what I refer to as scribal praxis, meaning what do they do? In Hebrew, we say min hagei sofrim.
Yeah.
What is the actual practical thing done by scribes? And that might not line up with what the legal texts say. And that's because the people who wrote the legal text may not have known how to actually write a Torah scroll.
They may not have been scribes.
And they say
not all scribes are rabbis.
So there are three professions that required very specialized knowledge that even someone like Maimonides may not have had, which was a scribe, a stam scribe, meaning specifically of Torah scrolls, tefillin and mezuzahs, a mohel, circumciser, and a shochet, somebody who slaughters animal. Now, you might read all the books in the world about how you're supposed to perform circumcision. I'm going to trust the guy who was taught by the other guy who did 1,000 of them before he let the new guy do even one. And then supervise him. I'm not going to trust the guy who read a bunch of books.
No.
And so this is kind of a
specialized... You cannot be self-taught with this. You cannot be self-taught with any of those things.
Right.
So
that's fascinating.
Because it's actually not about you. It is about you in that you are bringing this, and you are the vessel, and you are providing it, and you are serving. So... but you're not allowed to sign it, and you don't, right? Other than that, this is the way that you are serving God and you're serving your community. So it's not about you, it's about everyone out there.
Talk about you're not allowed to sign it.
Who's going to be reading it. Like, you have to think about, am I writing, okay, is what I've written kosher, so it's fine, but is it hard to read? Is it ugly? Actually, I had two teachers. They taught me in more the German tradition.
Okay.
Mark was taught in more of a Polish tradition, although his teacher was Indian. Then my teachers were sort of Canadian and American, Turkish, Russian. But their teachers were, right? So you teach what your teacher taught you.
Okay.
So I teach in the German tradition. There's different ways of writing. Like when you've seen my husband Mark's writing, that's very much more Polish. The way I write is like this. And it's much more square. It's much more like, as I like to say, einzweit. It's very, it's very square. It's very 0 degrees, 90 degrees. And his is much more dancey. It is a bit rounder because that's generally how the scripts go. And there's different scripts in different countries. But of course, I'm not German. I've never, lived in Germany, but that's the tradition I was taught in. So as you know from looking at manuscripts, you can go, oh, well, it could have been written in a particular country, or it could have just been written, it wasn't necessarily written in this particular country of the diaspora. It might have been written somewhere else by someone who's just trained that way. Because now with people moving around so much, people always moved around, but so it's easier now.
We have a big problem with Italian manuscripts. In that, so a lot of manuscripts, of course, is what's called a Caulifon, which is the section at the end where the scribe says, it was the 3rd day of the week of such and such month in a year, and I wrote this for so and so. But most manuscripts, that hasn't survived. And in Torah scrolls, it never existed. There are actually some exceptions, but that's a different story.
I have a story about an exception.
Ooh, I want to hear that.
Okay.
So, there's a bunch of exceptions where the Caulifon is a forgery, but there's actually a bunch of real exceptions. It's not a forgery. Not when I say a bunch, it's a few dozen maybe that have ever been found. Maybe less than that.
A lot for Megillat Esther.
No, I'm talking about Torah.
I know, but with Megillat Esther also, like a lot of these Italian ones, like these young women and actually girls that were writing Megillat Esther, 200, 300, 400 years ago. Some of these Megillat Esther that have been, up for auction in the last several years, and they all have colophons.
Okay.
And some of the Sofrot living today also, have colophons attached to their Megillot Esther.
Oh, just of Esther.
Yeah.
So the problem we have with Italian manuscripts where there's no colophon, or if it's a Torah scroll, is that we have, in the instances where we do have a colophon, we'll sometimes have the same scribe who will write in an Ashkenazi style, which is Northern European German.
Yeah.
The same scribe will write in a Sephardic style. The same scribe will start writing in an Italian style. And it really came down to the patron who bought the manuscript from him, and it's not necessarily a Torah scroll. It could be, a book on medicine. Will say, I want this in the Sephardic handwriting. I want this in the German handwriting. And the scribes in Italy, especially Northern Italy, did all three fluidly, like without a problem. And it just, whoever ordered it and said, this is the style I want, he would write it in that style.
Yeah.
And so you got to be really careful. You look at a style and you're like, oh, that's the writing of Northern Europe. But it was written in Venice.
Right.
So you got to be careful with that.
You do, actually. And actually, this Sofer Stam, the Bukharan Sofer Stam I mentioned earlier, who made this for me, he was asked to write a Torah scroll that actually Mark arranged that for him to write for this community. But of course they were Ashkenazi. So they were like, oh, he's Bukharan? What is it going to look like?
We won't be able to read it.
You're right. They'll be just like, we want it to reflect us. So he was like, it's not a problem. I'll write in your way. And he did.
Wow.
So, that was just a few years ago. Yeah.
So tell me about the colophons.
The colophon. Okay. Well, obviously with Megillot Esther, it's quite common, especially with these young women. There have also been notes left behind. There was a Torah scroll that I checked, must have been 15 years ago now. And I won't say the community. I don't tend to announce communities because it's their Torah and their business. But so I was checking it, and I was rolling through, and it obviously, was very old, and it was made up of a couple of different scrolls, and it has been patched together a bit, but very nicely.
It was made up of a bunch of scrolls.
Well, sometimes if a Sefer is part of it's damaged, and you either will rewrite new and attach to that, or you will maybe have different damaged parts and you amalgamate two other scrolls to get one good usable scroll.
I call that a Franken scroll.
Oh, you have not seen the Franken scroll we have at our house.
Okay.
It's literally
and I don't mean that in a negative way.
Patchwork. No, we don't either.
I think Franken scrolls are beautiful because you think you have one scroll and you realize this is actually 10 scrolls.
So many different traditions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And different periods and different
and it actually
styles.
It takes a lot of skill to be able to piece these together.
Yeah. Unless it's Yemenite. Because every Yemenite scroll is written according to the same tikkun. So you could take any column from a Yemenite scroll and insert it into any other scroll.
Identical. That's right.
It's identical, at least what's in that column, maybe not what's on each line.
They also have more letters in their Torah scroll than the rest of us.
Really?
Yes, they do. So it's all very well to say the Torah is identical for all Jews and always has been forever, but actually the Yemonites have, I think it's 11 more letters.
Really?
Yeah, but it doesn't change the meaning of anything, which is important. It's mostly sort of yods and vavs, that sort of thing.
Meaning the spelling is slightly different.
It's just the spelling. So just like in modern Hebrew, they would maybe insert, a vav somewhere that you wouldn't normally have a vav because there's no vowels used in modern Hebrew.
It's worse than that. 2 or 3 years ago, the Academy of the Hebrew Language decided they were going to change the spelling system.
Oh,
so everything
written,
written 10 years ago, if it's reprinted today, is supposed to be updated.
Yeah.
To where, like the word Ima, Aleph, Mem, Aleph, for last 2,000 years, it's Aleph, Mem, Aleph. They decided, no, it should be Aleph, Yud, Mem, Aleph. Because it's E's. Every time we have E, we should put in a Yud.
But we don't need it.
I don't need it, but that's the rule they made.
Yeah, and we don't make those rules.
So the spelling has changed in our lifetimes, in the lifetimes of babies, right?
I know. That's a good way of putting it, actually. Yeah. God, it's almost like the Académie Française, isn't it? It's just like, we've made a decision, everyone.
Oh no, it's much worse.
We didn't ask any of you, but we've made a decision. As far as the origin, like the very beginnings of some of these rules, I literally would have to go and research each one to find out where they came from and when they started going into larger use. We have definitely got stricter and stricter and stricter as we've gone on, which in some ways is helping us write better and is helping us make things that are easier to read and are very practical as far as the use of the materials and things like that. So those are good as I would personally define them, but then there are others that are just, sometimes they seem to be, their argument seems to be being strict for the sake of being strict, and I can show you how strict I am, and I don't have a lot of time for that. I know that if that is meaningful for someone in their particular practice, then obviously, bavakasha, please do, because people have to make
What would be an example of that?
decisions for themselves. Well, just things to do with, for example, Sefer Tagin, where
Tell us what that is.
ooh.
I know your husband's writing a PhD on it, but
Yes, he is writing a PhD on it. He's almost done.
yay.
Yeah, it's exciting. How do I explain Sefer Tagin? This is where I go, oh, that's a vague question, and I have a lot of detailed answers. You probably have a more concise
I'll
answer
give the
to
short
that.
answer. It's a book that says you put a little symbol there and another symbol there.
Oh,
and
okay.
Different. I call them doohickeys. You put a little doohickey here, and I'm from the Midwest. And a little doohickey there, and okay. So how are people strict when it comes to Sefer Tagin?
Right, when you say doohick, okay, so I'll elaborate on your doohickeys, and that is there'll be certain letters that are written differently in order to convey a different idea or to act maybe as lecture notes, which actually the Torah is, as some people will teach, lecture notes, referring to other things that we are meant to do or other traditions to remind us of other ideas, right?
Some of them we don't know why they're there, right? I mean,
well, and the thing
or
is,
do we?
Nowadays, if you come across, for example, so one that's very obvious that a lot of people spot right away is the Pei Melufefet or Pei Melufa, which is the letter Pei or Fe, and it's got a spiral in it, or it's got a tiny letter Pei, Fe inside, where the normal little tongue is.
So it doesn't look like a normal pay. It's like I call it a curly pay.
Yeah, fine. So,
Okay.
so I have come across many Sifrei Torah that were written 300 years ago, and I've restored those. And I know from a historical point of view, restoring those is not that's not a popular thing. But if you want to keep using something, you have to keep it kosher. So there obviously is a difference between restoration and conservation.